Hello and welcome to this international session. I am Veronica Schiariti. I am a developmental pediatrician and I am joining in from Canada, the west coast of Canada in British Columbia. The title of my presentation is Global COVID-19 Childhood Disability Data Coordination, a collaborative initiative of the International Alliance of Academies of Childhood Disability. I have nothing to disclose. I just want to clarify that I am a member of the EACD and founding member of the Latin America Academy of Child Development and Disability, and I am an observer of the HUFIC Functioning and Disability Reference Group of the WHO, and I'm a volunteer trying to disseminate the application and implementation of the ICF. What is the situation about COVID-19? COVID-19 continues to develop with rapid spread across the globe, and there are approximately 40 million confirmed cases around the world, and you know that this is changing every day. And the Americas is now the epicenter, and this is based on the WHO situation report dated on October 20th. Almost 90% of the world's students have been affected by the nationwide school closures. That's more than 1.5 billion children and youth, that including kids with disabilities. The pandemic has and will have an economic impact and will increase social inequity with permanent consequences on the health, well-being, and learning of children with or without disabilities. The COVID-19 continues to cause major disruptions in service provision, participation, and overall well-being of children and young people with disabilities and their families worldwide. And as such, the International Alliance of Academies of Childhood Disability has created a COVID-19 task force, and this started in June 2020 and is ongoing, with the main goal of learning and understanding the impact of COVID-19. As you may know, the task force created 3 working groups: the surveys group, the resources, and the listening and sharing subgroup. We're all working really hard to produce good outcomes and to share our results with all of you. So I'm gonna focus on the surveys subgroup that I am leading. And we have launched the Global COVID-19 Childhood Disability Data Coordination. So that's the topic of my talk. And I'm gonna share some details about the process and some of the results that we have. And I know that during the sessions, you're gonna learn about the other exciting outcomes about the other subgroups. So I just want to acknowledge that we are an international group and we're representing different academies of childhood disabilities, and this is part of the task force. So I am leading this survey subgroup, and I'm representing the EACD, and the other colleagues that are working with me on this subgroup are representing different countries and different perspectives and cultures from different academies around the globe. What questions are we seeking to answer? Based on available surveys data, we want to answer what is the short, medium, and long-term global impact of COVID-19 crisis on physical health, mental health, participation, access to education, financial status of children and young adults with disabilities and their families, and what are the barriers and facilitators accessing treatments and services, and which strategies and innovations are working to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on service provisions. So we have a big task ahead and a big challenge. How are we going to achieve our goals? We started a scope review of surveys launched or completed worldwide related to the impact of COVID-19 in childhood onset disabilities. We're actively engaging the members of all the International Alliance of Academies of Childhood Disabilities to share information regarding ongoing or completed initiatives. We posted a short questionnaire on the task force page, and we're asking members and others organizations to help us identify information regarding surveys, again, ongoing or completed. So far, we have identified 36 surveys and more are coming. We know that there are different surveys being launched in different regions of the world. So we're inviting everybody to participate and share their surveys with us. 18 of the surveys are actively seeking participants. So please go to the website and try to participate. 17 surveys were developed in collaboration with people with disabilities. That means that we have a task to encourage other groups developing surveys to involve actively people with disabilities. And this is important because we want that the result of these surveys impact their everyday life. So we need them to be involved from the beginning, so from developing the questionnaires. Some of the themes that we have identified so far from those completed surveys are impact of COVID-19 on mental health of children and families, satisfaction and experiences delivering remote support, impact of social isolation on people with disabilities, and impact of remote learning on children with disabilities. And we're going to share some of the results with you. Few surveys target a global audience. So many of the surveys were directed to specific regions or specific countries, but we don't have a lot of international surveys. What outcomes do we expect to deliver? We will produce a global childhood disability data coordination report, mapping out data collection initiatives describing the impact of COVID-19 worldwide on children and adults with disabilities and their families. We're producing monthly flash news. There are short communications highlighting the key findings every month. The special focus is on consistency in data collection, gaps, that means in content and geographical misrepresentation and perspectives. We want to have a big role in advocacy and of course, learning lessons about the global preparedness for future health emergencies. This is a short video that I want to show. This is the Task Force webpage showing our surveys page. And again, we have a short documentation form that you can fill in describing your survey or a survey that you know or you participated. And then we categorize those into ongoing and completed, and you can click and learn about, which surveys you can participate and learn from the completed surveys. And as you can see here, we have flash news, and the flash news number 3 is coming. So hopefully you can visit the website and participate and share your information with us. So far, we got 36 surveys, and this slide is showing the representation of the regions of the world. So we have been promoting this initiative worldwide, but I think some of the academies have been more active disseminating this effort. So we have more surveys coming from the region of South America. So it's a big plus for ALDIT, the Latin America Academy of Childhood Disability. Many of their members have been sharing surveys with us. We have surveys coming from the Western Pacific regions and mainly from Australia and New Zealand, a few from North America and Europe. And so we have misrepresentation of some of the regions like Southeast Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean region. So hopefully we're gonna get through the next month more surveys representing those. This is just showing the target audience, and we classify children and youth with disabilities, and then we have different age groups, and we ask that brief question about, what's the target audience of your survey. But I'm just showing here that 54 describe that they are targeting information about children and youth with disabilities. But what we learned is that even though they want to learn about the impact of COVID on that age group, they are not asking direct questions or self-report questions to those kids. Mainly, these are proxy reports. So that's something that we want to highlight, and hopefully invite other surveys to direct questions to the children. Ongoing mapping exercise, what we're doing is analyzing each one of the key findings of the completed surveys. So it's a big task that we're sharing with the group that I mentioned. And we're going through the key findings and identifying the themes that they are covering on their findings. And these are just a summary, and I highlighted previously some of the themes, but these are the categories that we are coming up so far. So it's about information, or accessing to information, sharing information, up-to-date information about COVID and what to do, access to protective equipment, access to remote support. A lot of themes cover education and communication. As I mentioned before, mental health, physical health, the impact of COVID on participation, the need for technology and having, depending on technology to access services, transportation, well-being, friendship, how to keep up with virtual socializing this time, safety, and financial support. So these are some of the categories that we are identifying from the mapping exercise that we're doing. We're using two frameworks, the ICF and the UN Conventions on the Rights of the Child. And this is an interesting exercise because we are mapping the themes that I mentioned before to the frameworks to identify gaps or overlaps in terms of the content of the survey. Just briefly, I want to share some of the results that we are producing from the mapping exercise that is ongoing. So when we link the themes that I mentioned before to the frameworks, at first the ICF, we identify that the components that usually are represented by the themes are body functions related to mental health, activity. There were many themes related to communication skills. So how the COVID-19 is impacting communication skills due to restrictions of going to school or interacting with peers. There were other themes related to participation restriction, like socializing and the impact of socializing in everyday life and in different age groups. And in terms of environmental factors, there were different environmental factors identified as barriers, like impact of COVID on caregivers' health, financial pressure, lack of support in terms of health and education, and remote support, the impact of having technology or lack of technology accessible to keep learning and keep accessing the special education programs or even the health visits. So we're learning as we go, but those are mainly the components that were so far well represented by the themes. When we use the UN Convention of the Right of the Child, so we have all the articles of the convention, and we were doing this exercise of mapping the themes to the articles of the convention. There are some of the articles that are frequently represented, like Article 23, about children with disabilities, and Article 24 about health and access to health, water, food, and the safety of the environment. There were many articles, themes related to articles related to education, like Article 28 and 29. So at the end of this exercise, we hope to come up with a good representation of both frameworks and identify the gaps and lesson learned and prepare for a future emergency. So I want to invite all of you to share your experience during the COVID-19 lockdown. I know that there are different phases and different regions of the world are going through different phases right now. And so please share your surveys and your resources with the international community so we can learn from each other. These are some of the references that I was mentioning during the presentation, and I have a long list that I'm happy to share with all of you. There are many knowledge translation materials accessible to all, to children with or without disabilities, professionals and parents. And so I invite you to check all those. All the academies that are members of the Alliance have helped disseminate some of these resources. So I invite you to check all of them. So let's keep our colleagues and communities well informed, and I think this is a great session for doing that. And so thank you for being part of this. And I will join live for the questions and answers. Thank you.